Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click on the link in the description box below to sign up for the Tiger Fitness newsletter. Within a week of publishing this video, we will give out a $50 gift card to tigerfitness.com to one lucky person who does all of these steps. Boom! What's up, everyone? Marc Lobliner, tigerfitness.com. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off to all shit because my Saturday was ruined by the USA Today and the US government spouting off of their mouths some bullshit research coming from the people who literally invented type 2 diabetes. That's right, child onset diabetes was pretty much non-existent before they came involved with their stupid food guide pyramid. Sorry, it looks like a period to me, which pretty much sent obesity rates through the roof due to their recommendation of literally simple carbohydrates as the base of your diet, vilifying fat, sending insulin levels through the roof. So this link to this garbage rag called the USA Today, I'm going to post down below. The title, the headline, all over the place. Link to me on Twitter, everywhere. People messaging me, coconut oil isn't healthy, it's never been healthy. Right there, I just say, shut the hell up. The American Heart Association, those brilliant people, associated with the government that also gave us the food guide pyramid. Thank you for that, you dumbasses. Recently released a report advising against the use of coconut oil. So let's advise against the use of a healthy fat found naturally in a vegan source. That's real smart, guys. The Dietary Ferrets and Cardiovascular Disease Advisory, again, a bunch of bought and paid for idiots, probably paid for by the sugar industry as they were before, reviewed existing data on saturated fats showing coconut oil increased LDL bad cholesterol in 7 out of 7 controlled trials. Researchers didn't see a difference between coconut oil and other oils high in saturated fat like butter, beef fat, and palm oil. In fact, 82% of the fat in coconut oil is saturated, which I'll explain why they're a bunch of fucking idiots. According to the data, far beyond butter, beef fat, and pork, saturated fat is good. Because coconut oil increases LDL cholesterol, risk for cardiovascular disease, and has no known offsetting favorable effects, we advise against the use of coconut oil, the AHA said in this advisory. Frank Sachs, otherwise known as Frank Ball Sachs from now on, lead author in the report, said he has no idea why people think coconut oil is healthy. I don't know, maybe you should watch this video, you stupid moron. You're just going to increase people eating more unhealthy, simple carbohydrates, processed foods by doing stuff like this. Do you realize how stupid you are? Past weight loss studies might be responsible. The reason coconut oil is so popular for weight loss is partly due to my research on medium-chain triglycerides. Marie-Pierre St. Onge, assistant professor of nutritional medicine at Cornell University Medical School, told Time in April, coconut oil has a higher proportion of medium-chain triglycerides than most other fats or oils. And my research showed eating MCTs may increase the rate of metabolism more than eating long-chain triglycerides. The problem is St. Onge's research used a designer oil packed with 100% MCTs. Traditionally, coconut oil contains only 13 to 15%. Another study she published showed smaller doses of MCTs does help with weight loss over adolescents. That doesn't mean that saturated fats are bad. The AHA, this is where you know they're stupid. The AHA recommends eating no more than 6% of saturated fat as part of daily calories for those who need to lower cholesterol. That's really skewing the data in your support. These are people with pre-existing conditions, not healthy adults. These are people with pre-existing conditions, people who need to lower cholesterol, not people who are looking to live a healthy life, not healthy individuals, not exercising individuals. Don't put us all in a blanket, USA Today, with this slanted fake fucking news, you douchebags. Before you trash coconut oil, here's where they refute themselves, and you know that they're just a bunch of clickbaiting idiots. Know that saturated fat is a loaded term. While the AHA warns against it, people who cut saturated fat out of their diet might not necessarily lower their heart disease risk. In a 2015 BMJ review study suggested, that's because some people fill their void with sugar, white flour, and empty calories. Also, some fat is important to help bodies absorb nutrients from other food. Many have said butter has gotten a bad reputation. Still, it might not be a bad idea to opt for vegetable oils or olive oil, Sachs says. Plus, coconut oil can still be an effective moisturizer or hair conditioner. You can put it on your body, but don't put it in your body. Sachs, you ball sack motherfucker. Come on, man. Let's just go over some things I've looked up, and I would like to give a shout out to Authority Nutrition for listing these studies. AuthorityNutrition.com pretty concisely. This is not from Authority Nutrition. This is some research that I just had on file. Improve cardio risk factors. are what happens to saturated fats. Saturated fat reduce lipoprotein, A, and that correlates to risk for heart disease when it's lowered. Women with higher saturated fat in their diets also lost more fat, according to studies. Saturated fat also leads to strong bones. Saturated fat is required for calcium to be incorporated into the bone. So you need that. For that reason, a lot of researchers on bones suggest that 50% of your total fat intake comes from saturated fat. Liver health. It actually protects your liver from alcohol and other medications. Brain. Most fat in your brain are saturates, which is why I'll link it down below. In my morning ritual, I actually cook my eggs in coconut oil, and I also have Ritual AM before that, which is high in MCTs, which no one's arguing MCTs are awesome, but those are also a saturated fat. It's just MCTs. And so what? Only 50% of coconut oil is MCTs. That's still a good amount of MCTs. And just because it showed no effects at a lower dose doesn't mean it doesn't have good effects over time, okay? So most fats in your brain are saturated. Nerve signaling. You need them for nerve signaling. Immune system. They play a key role in immune health. Saturated fats are a good source of energy. They're carriers of fat-soluble vitamins. It's a preferred source of fuel for the heart, and it's antiviral. Coconut oil does have antiviral effects. It helps the immune system. For some studies on this, I will link these down below, or you can, actually, you know what, just look them up. The description box is going to be through the roof. Hooper et al. Reduction in saturated fat intake for cardiovascular disease. Essentially, the results, the study found no statistically significant effects of reducing saturated fat in regards to heart attacks, strokes, or all-cause deaths. Although reducing saturated fat had no effects, replacing some of it with polyunsaturated fat led to a 27% lower risk of cardiovascular events, but not death, heart attacks, or strokes. So very small amount, but there is a little bit there. So people who reduced their saturated fat intake were just as likely to die or get heart attacks or strokes compared to those who ate more saturated fat. From Souza RJ et al., intake of saturated and unsaturated fatty acids and risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes, systematic review and meta-analysis of observational studies. Result, saturated fat intake was not linked with heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, or dying of any cause. Want me to keep going? From Siri-Tarino PW et al. Meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies evaluating the association of saturated fat with cardiovascular disease. Results, during follow-up, about 3% of participants developed heart disease or stroke. Saturated fat intake was not linked with an increase in cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, or strokes among even those with the highest intake. Chowdhury R et al. Association of dietary, circulating, and supplemental fatty acids with coronary risk, a systematic review and meta-analysis. The study did not find any link between saturated fat and the saturated fat consumption and the risk of heart disease or death. One final one, just a dagger in the heart. Schwab U et al. Effect of the amount of type of dietary fat on risk factors for cardiovascular disease and risk of developing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and cancer. A systematic review. Results, consuming saturated fat was not linked with an increase in heart disease or increase in type 2 diabetes. That's about it. However, substituting refined carbs for saturated fat may increase the risk for cardiovascular disease. So the government recommending carbs as their overall master nutrient is not only making people fatter because people think the government knows all, right? Well, the government in this case is stupid. And this guy, Mr. Ballsacks, he's stupid too because he's giving very, 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 very irresponsible advice. What they need to do is promote overall dietary balance. And we need saturated fat. 6% saturated fat in your diet is absurd. I'd recommend anywhere from 20 to 50% of your total fat intake coming from saturated fat. Saturated fat is necessary. I'm not saying go out and eat sticks of butter, but I will say the results of diets such as keto diets in data in improving HDL, LDL, and triglyceride levels, and the results of these studies showing no deleterious effect of consuming saturated fats show you that you need to just ignore this study and consider the source, the same source who gave our children diabetes. Government, I'm putting you on blast, and that's not a game.